I have to start checking, changing and rebaiting the 300 traps that we have here every 48 hours. If we get a stoat to the island, it becomes every 36. Now, a couple of you guys have asked how many people work here. 3. So if you take one of us off the floor, that leaves 2 people to run the whole entire island in the busy summer. Very hard, it's very grueling, the heat is horrible when you're having to do all 3 devices. We also trap the Ruti Point Islet, which is in between us and Pōnui. Now Pōnui is a working farm, they have rats, they have mice, they have a pair of cats. And we also trap the Frenchman's Cap between us and Pakatoa, which is a little stop-off point, especially coming from the north end of Waiheke Island. So it's a lot of work to undertake, and of course we have to take a little boat or a dinghy out to those points as well to make sure that we are fully encasing and keeping the island safe, especially on our coastal areas. Now if we move this guy over here, this is what we call a rat motel. Has anyone read about the rat motel on the way up? No. There's been a couple of people who've come across. It's a pretty cool little box design. It actually imitates an underground nest. So it's nice and cool. Rats absolutely love what I call the jungle gym. They love the inquisitive, they're smart animals. And they will try and get through doorways, windows, anything. They'll try and find little holes to get through to see what's going on. So if a rat came through, again we've got that tracking card system to find their footprints. But then they've got options to go left or right. They mostly go right, funnily enough. These are just your generic Bunnings traps that you'd buy from Bunnings, Mitre 10 Placemakers. And they're loaded with peanut butter as well, obviously they're set. And we would catch bed and breakfast in here. Funnily enough, we actually catch 70% of our incursions in one of these. I think it's just because it has that safe feeling and a food source that they're more inclined to go into one of these than they probably would one of those. So that is what we call a rat motel. And they're actually now used a lot around New Zealand for different eradication projects as well, but we were the ones that came up with this design. Save this big one for last, eh? I'll show you some cards. Now, I'm going to put you guys to the test and see if you know what some of these are. I'll tell you. What do you guys reckon? Really small. Think smaller.
It's my mouth.
Maybe.
Tiny.
Tiny.
Not nice. Skink.
You know, if you get things right, you have to stay on as a volunteer, right?
More than enough.
So that there, guys, is a skink footprint.
Oh, go Kerry.
So we've got, like I said, we've got moka skinks and shore skinks, but that's not their footprints because they are much larger. They're about the size of this card sometimes, maybe half the size. But these are the copper skinks. So we've got native copper skinks on the island, little brown ones, and they love peanut butter. They run in and out and they eat the peanut butter. So sometimes, don't tell Glenn, I'm a bit naughty. I put a bit more in there. Costs us lots of money, but I like to make sure everyone's having a good tea. Yeah. Now we'll do this one. Think even smaller. Did you see on the back of my car? You know, if you hear things right, you just stay on as a volunteer, right?
Carrie, got it? I'm too scared to say.
I'll sort of stick while I'm one ahead.
Almost, but he's those too.
Skinks always.
And that's a footprint.
At my parents' house, they wander around the house.
Foot that small.
Always slightly freak me out, the skinks.
Think about an insect. An insect Do you guys like school holidays? Yeah. Do you like coming and catching rats and mice on school holidays? So yes, that is footprints of a weta or a cockroach. Now, if you were to think about a weta or a cockroach, if you put their foot under a microscope and turn it over, they've got 3 little bars, and that's what helps them climb trees. So we've got forest weta, not weta panga here, but they get very big and like to go through tunnels as well because they also like peanut butter. Go figure.
Is there an indigenous cockroach?
No, I don't think so. I think they're all introduced, yeah. Right.
Just in terms, sorry, just before
Yeah.
you go on, the skinks, were they here on the island?
Copper skinks, yes. We've introduced the moko and the shore skink, which are endemic to New Zealand native.
Is skink pest?
Rainbow skinks are, so those are the purpley ones. They are a pest. They will, if they get out of control, they will take over like the copper skink territory. Luckily enough, we've got enough brown foraging birds that if they are here, that they eat them. Alright, now these 2 footprints. Last 2 I promised, guys. No idea.
No.
Remember, if you get things right, you have to become a volunteer and stay.
Is my wife ever say
Yeah, millionaire hot seat.
What do you say?
Another insect.
Robin, you can't come back now. No more education projects.
I of course like that.
Do you like peanut butter, guys?
What is it? The book that
Not much.
the bird one, your drama came out of with. It has instructions for making these things.
You're right about one of them.
Yeah.
So how much peanut butter did you go through? Like,
How much do we go through?
yeah.
About 8 to 10 kgs a year.
So you have a sponsorship with a peanut butter factory company.
No.
Have you guys ever thought about trying to get one?
Yes.
Oh, really? And they didn't come to the party?
No.
That's not
What
fair.
peanut butter do you use?
Well, that's 50% true and false. Pig's Peanut Butter used to sponsor, is it Predator Free New Zealand?
Right.
But big project. And they used to send all their off-run to Predator Free, and then they used to distribute at a reduced cost to projects around New Zealand.
Right.
That has now ceased. So we have to go through different companies. Sometimes we just use cheap supermarket stuff. Unfortunately, because we started off with pigs, these rats are expensive, I tell you. I currently go through, I think it's 40 Thieves.
Oh, yeah.
And they do a catering tub of like 2 or 3 kgs.
Do they
Which
know
is-
do they know you're buying it? The island
Yeah,
buying it?
yeah. No, we've gone through every company in New Zealand that's a peanut butter distributor, maker, supplier. They support their locals, but we have tried to even piggyback on other people. But, so yes, it can get quite expensive when you're talking about a year's supply of peanut butter and having to keep it fresh. So you know we only buy like 2 or 3 kgs at a time. So these
asked the
guys,
schools to bring
these
an
are
extra
both
jar
rat
of peanut
footprints.
butter out for the island.
Now, we'll start off with this guy. This guy, he's a really easy catch. Do you know why? He's hungry. So, he's probably come from maybe Ponui Island, from the farm. This time of year, they're moving all their stock around, so their rat snap habitat is being disturbed, and the food source is less. So they're having to swim across, and it's not a very fast swim, only about 700 metres at our closest point. Come running around the island, and they're coming into all of the boxes, and they're eating that peanut butter, and they're loving it. Very much so they end up in either one of these or in the traps in those. Usually 72 hours to a week we'll catch these guys, and they'll be eradicated. When we do have a incursion, even if we found the footprints today and we caught him tomorrow, we still have to trap every 48 hours for 5 weeks. If we didn't catch by week 5, we then go into having to look to remove all of our native species off the island. So that then becomes a huge
Are they
headache.
GPU?
No. Only 4 of them are trapped.
Just a rat.
The
or
rest of them
yeah,
are just wild.
a mouse even.
So I can catch 4 of them, or well, 6 technically. Because the other one's young, but the rest of them are wild.
Rat.
So then we're bringing in teams to come and help us catch and collect.
Have you ever had to do it?
No, thank goodness. But that's like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And do the rodents tend to come as individuals, or do you sometimes get
Rats always come as a group or a pair at least, and when they swim they raft together. So if one can swim 3 kilometres, if you're rafting 2, 3, 4 together, you times that. And that's how far they can swim. So once he gets tired, he drops to the back, and this one comes forward. So it's very clever. In fact, there was actually a study done not so long ago, and I know it sounds horrible, where they dropped rats into beakers. Obviously, the first rat drowned after about 5 minutes of treading water. The second one they removed from the beaker and let have a couple of minutes rest, and then dropped it back in. That rat treaded water for 60 hours because it learnt that it will be saved. So you can kind of get the idea of what could happen and how the distance they can swim if they know that they're going to get to dry land and a food source. Then we've got the stoats. If we ever had a stoat, if we got a female stoat, female stoats are perpetually pregnant. They can force gestation. They have a caravan, I know it sounds funny, a caravan of 12 roughly in their litter. Within 2 weeks of giving birth to that kit of that caravan, the male stoat will come and find them and mate with every single female kit in that litter, which then become perpetually pregnant. So the amount increases tenfold, and then the eradication is huge. Exponential. So yeah, we get rid of these guys real quick, the rats, when they're hungry. We never want to have to undergo stoat fighting ever again. Then we have these guys. What do you reckon the problem with these ones are? So where do you reckon they've come from?
Locally.
People's feet, people's bags.
Or people's boats. Now, if you think about all those fancy boats you saw today, where do they all keep them? Probably in a marina. And if you've ever been to a marina before, you know that there's a bar and or a restaurant. There's a food source. So these guys, they feed up on the food source, jump aboard these people's boats, unbeknownst to them before, have a sleep. Bob comes down and goes, it's Auckland anniversary weekend, let's take the boat out everybody. Jumps aboard, comes out to Rotorua. Rat wakes up, jumps off, meet a swim, and here we are. These guys are extremely hard to catch because they're full, they've got resources on board, they can last roughly about 2 weeks without eating. So they're just in being inquisitive and finding where that food source is. Once they do find out where that food source is and they start becoming hungry and looking to cache food, what food source have they got here to eat apart from peanut butter?
Birds and trees.
That's right. All of our native bird species, our ground foraging species, breeding season this time